Hello and welcome to the annual safety training for all employees at Pediatric Home Service. This training is going to cover all of the annual OSHA required safety trainings, including hazard communication and right to know, Minnesota Aware, emergency response protocols, personal protective equipment, respiratory protection voluntary use, lockout, tagout affected, bloodborne pathogens awareness, and ergonomics and back injury prevention. Following the training, you will also be asked to complete a short quiz to verify your learning and comprehension. The first section of training is all about hazard communication, which is also commonly referred to as right to know. This is all from 29 CFR 1910.1200, including the GHS, or the Globally Harmonized System, and is going to cover several topics within this training section. One of the cornerstones of any health and safety program is teaching employees how to identify hazards that they may come across in their work area. This slide summarizes many of those main concepts, starting with previous experience. What we know, for obvious reasons, is that people that have been around a facility are generally going to know most of the hazards that they're going to come across. Compare that to somebody who's brand new to the facility, well, they're just not going to know. So if you are an experienced employee, hopefully you're going to reach out to these newer people and give them a little awareness of what's going on that could potentially harm them. Also pay attention to any type of signs or placards or warning labels or markings that may be around the facility. So you might notice a symbol on an electrical panel or a pictogram on a chemical label, right? These are ways that we're trying to warn you, hey, pay attention. This chemical, this process, this particular piece of equipment is hazardous. You need to be aware of that. The signs are there for a reason. And finally, think about the visual observations that you're coming across, right? What are your senses telling you? Is there something that smells different? Is there a liquid pooling on the floor somewhere, right? Does it smell different than it normally does when you come in the morning, right? These are all signs that, hey, maybe something's going on that I need to be aware of, and maybe, just maybe, I should tell somebody about that before somebody gets hurt. In the health and safety world, when employees are injured, oftentimes we notice that it's because they're being asked to do something that they've never done before. These are called non-routine tasks, and it's your right as an employee to understand all the potential hazards in a task or job that you are being asked to do. Now, most of the time, this is going to be accomplished through pre-job or pre-task training when you're being explained how to do this job. Now, if you wish, we could always do a more formal non-routine hazard checklist that's going to methodically walk us through all the different components of this job and task and identify those hazards for you. If you want to see those or see one of those completed for you, you can always ask your supervisor and or contact human resources for one of those forms. The list that you see on this slide is a summary of all the major chemical hazards that you may come across when working at Pediatric Home Service. If you look at the slide carefully, you'll see that it's broken down into patient homes, office areas, warehouse, biomed, and pharmacy. Pay particular attention to the area that you work in. And generally speaking, what you're going to see are dusts, adhesives, cleaners, solvents, some gases, pharmaceuticals. These are all things in the major categories that you're going to come across for the chemical hazards in the facilities. Now, if you would like to see the formal chemical list and or the written hazard communication program, you can find those all in M files. The table that you see on this slide is directly out of the hazard communication program. What this table does is summarize all the major chemical hazard groupings that we're going to come across in the Pediatric Home Service facilities. What you see is chemical name, the pictogram description, and the location used or the process where you're going to find it. So for instance, adhesives, what we know from the pictogram descriptions is that adhesives are irritants and flammable. They're used in the office, warehouse, and patient homes. Organic solvents are flammable, health hazards, and environmental hazards. Cleaners are irritants, health hazards, and corrosives. Gases are compressed gas cylinders. Pharmaceuticals are often health hazards, acutely toxic, and irritants. Solder is a health hazard and an irritant, and fuels such as gasoline and diesel and exhaust fumes in general are going to be flammable, health hazards, environmental and irritants. Taking what we learned on the previous slide about the major chemicals that are found at Pediatric Home Service, this slide shows us the 9 different pictograms that are consistent with a globally harmonized system that you may come across. Typically, where you're going to see these are when chemicals are brought in from a manufacturer outside. If you look at the label, you might see these different pictograms. The health hazard in the top left is an outline of a human body with what we call a glowing orb. These health hazards tend to be things that if you're exposed to for a long period of time, have the potential to create some type of long-term health effect. The flame is a symbol of a giant flame, which means that it is flammable. The exclamation mark means that it's an irritant of some sort. So if it gets in your system or on your skin or you inhale it, it has the potential to create some type of irritation. Gas cylinder has a picture of a compressed gas cylinder. Corrosion means that it has a picture of the test tube pouring some liquid on a metal bar in some type of hand. It means that if it gets on you, it has a potential of creating some type of chemical burn. The good old exploding bomb means that it's of an explosive product. You're not going to see very many of those in our facilities. The flame over a circle means that it's an oxidizer. Typically, you're only going to see these in some cleaners as well as welding gases in general. The environmental symbol is a picture of a dead fish, and a dead tree means that if it gets out into our environment, it has a negative effect. And the good old skull and crossbones means that it's acutely toxic. So if you get small amounts into or onto your body, it has the potential to create some pretty devastating effects. Now that you're aware of the major chemical hazards that you may come across in pediatric home service facilities, it's important to step back and understand how these chemicals have the potential of entering your body, and then from that, how to protect yourself. Now, we all know that sometimes chemicals smell. Those are all fumes that are coming off of it, and if you inhale those fumes, those materials have the potential of getting into your body through your respiratory system. Very similarly, if you spill a bunch on your skin or in your mucous membranes, well, it has the potential to absorb into your body through that method. Or if you were to drink some chemicals, then it's going to get into your body through your digestive system. The fifth point that we haven't talked about yet is all about injection. And primarily what I'm referencing here is we really need to be careful when we use compressed air hoses. We don't want to use compressed air to dust ourselves off and clean our bodies off at the end of a work shift. If you do so, then you have the potential of actually embedding those materials under your skin, and then we have a pretty significant exposure. This is a really good opportunity to talk about what you should do if you have some type of chemical exposure. Now, if you get chemicals in your eyes or on your face, what you need to do is locate one of these emergency eye wash stations immediately and then flush it for a solid 15 minutes. If you get chemicals on your skin, we need to wash with soap and water. Make sure we remove any type of contaminated clothing if that's possible. If you've inhaled or you've come across a lot of fumes, we need to move to fresh air and ventilate that space. And then if you swallow some, we need to get emergency medical assistance right away. In addition to any of these other forms, if you had a significant chemical exposure, let's call for help and get the professionals involved. In addition to understanding how chemicals get into and on our bodies, we need to understand how they're classified. We break these down primarily into health and physical hazards. Health hazards, as we see on the slide, are very similar to the health hazard pictogram that we saw a few slides back. Health hazards are things that if you're exposed to for a long period of time, have the ability to create some type of long-term illness or disease. So think carcinogens and reproductive toxins. Some chemicals are just known to attack a specific organ system, attack the liver or the nervous system or something of that nature. These are all considered health hazards. The other chemical classification are physical hazards. These are properties that are typically going to have a different type of pictogram that are associated with them. So think of the explosive or flammable or oxidizers or organic peroxides or corrosives. These are all things that are considered physical hazards and will create some type of an immediate type of injury to your body if you were exposed to them. Now that we understand the hazards that are present in our facilities and how we classify them and how they have the potential to get into or on our bodies, once we understand all those properties, what we do is we stick some type of label on it. Now you may come across one of several different types of labels in our facility. First of all is the GHS hazard label, or a globally harmonized system label. These labels are primarily found on bulk containers that come in from chemical manufacturers. They have some pretty strict information on them. They have those pictograms on them that we've looked at before, as well as some other pertinent information that you need to know to handle these materials correctly. More commonly, what you'll come across is smaller use containers, and they're either going to have an HMIS label or an NFPA diamond label on them. Either one of those labels is perfectly fine, and what you'll know is that they have the exact same information on them. The blue color is going to tell you about the health hazard associated with them. The red is all about the flammability characteristics. Yellow is about reactivity, and white is going to be any type of other information that they want you to know about it. Now, pay particular attention to these two types of labels. They're not just going to be colored. What you will also see is some type of number that's associated with them. Those numbers are going to be from 0 to 4, 4 meaning that it's an extreme hazard. So if you come across a chemical that has one of these labels on it and it says 4, 4, 4, you better step back and know what you're dealing with, versus if it says 0, 0, 0, it's probably water or something really benign, and it's not going to be that big of a deal, and you can use it a little bit more liberally. The last main section of hazard communication has to do with safety data sheets. Now, if you've been around for a while, you probably will remember a material safety data sheet, or an MSDS. Nowadays, with the globally harmonized system, these are all called safety data sheets. And what happens is all chemical manufacturers across the world are now held to the same standard. So in a safety data sheet format, what you'll find is that these are all organized in the same 16 section format, that it makes it much more easy to understand and find the information that's actually pertinent to you and what you need to know at the particular time. Know that it is your right as an employee to access safety data sheets for the materials and chemicals that you're using at any time that you wish. You can go and find the safety data sheets for all those materials by going to the M files and moving to the employee health and then the safety and security folders to find those safety data sheets. When you pull them up, you're going to see that they're organized into 16 different sections. One is all about the chemical identification information. Two is the hazard identification. In other words, what that material is. It's here that you're going to find all of those pictograms that we looked at earlier, as well as any type of important label elements or label numbers. Three is all about the composition. Four is probably one of the most useful sections that you'll be using on a regular basis. This is all about basic first aid and what you should do if you have some type of exposure to that material. Section 5 is all about firefighting. 6 is what happens if we release it. What do we need to do to clean it up? 7 is about how we should handle and store. 8 is all about exposure control and what PPE we should be using when we're handling it. 9 is all about chemical properties. 10 is all about stability and reactivity. 11 is toxicological information. 12 is ecological information. 13 is how we should dispose of and get rid of this material. 14 is important for the DOT and transportation information. Any regulatory information is going to be summarized to 15, and 16 is the catch-all for all the miscellaneous information. The Minnesota AWARE program is the Workplace Accident and Injury Reduction Program. This is a program that's specifically required for Minnesota companies, and think of it as the overlying health and safety document that commits upper management to be supportive of all of the employees' health and safety. It makes sure that we have responsibilities for you as an employee, that we have safety committees, and we're investigating accidents. We have some method of relaying safety hazards that we're finding in the facility to upper management to make sure that we're doing facility inspections and that we're orientating all of our employees to the health and safety and hazards that are present in our facility. One of the most important responsibilities that you have as an employee regarding the Minnesota WARE program is that we really do want to know if there are hazards present in the facility so that we can take care of them and help protect you and the other employees. So please report unsafe conditions that you may see. Let's be proactive with this. Is there spills going on? Is there carpet that's torn? Are there cord and tripping hazards in your areas? Or people needing to stand on chairs to access a light or a thermostat, something of that nature, please let us know. You can verbally notify HR or your supervisor or safety committee members, or you may do that anonymously by a written documentation and simply submit it into Human Resources or slide it under one of their doors. At Pediatric Home Service, we try to minimize most of the hazards that you're going to come across. Now, we do recognize that occasionally accidents happen and people are injured, and that's okay, but we need to make sure that you get the care that you need. So if it isn't a medical emergency, make sure that you call 911 immediately and get the help that you need. If it's a non-emergency and it's work-related and you have some type of injury or illness, or you just tweaked yourself or you don't feel right, please call the 24/7 work injury phone line at 1-844-847-8708. There's somebody that will be staffed on that line at all times. They're experienced healthcare providers, and they're going to help assess your medical condition, provide you with next steps, and it's also the first step of our documentation process to make sure that we follow up with you and we have a record of what's going on to help you. Now, after you've talked to them, please notify your supervisor immediately so we can start other additional internal paperwork and tracking systems and eventually make sure that you get the care that you need. And it all starts with that phone call and talking to your supervisor. In the event of a medical emergency at Pediatric Home Service, it is vital that the identifying employee immediately page the medical emergency response team. Go to any office phone, press the paging button, and say, "Your attention please, medical emergency response team to the blank area." Repeat the message, "Your attention please, medical emergency response team to the blank area." Once the page is received, all designated medical emergency response team members are to immediately respond to the location identified on the page. Assess all the relevant hazards and determine if additional assistance is needed, and when in doubt, make sure we call 911. At that point, isolate the area, control the scene, put on proper PPE, and then care for the victim in accordance with your level of medical, first aid, AED, and CPR training. Once the victim is taken care of, let's decontaminate the area following proper bloodborne pathogens procedures, and then meet, debrief, and complete all necessary paperwork with the assistance of an emergency response coordinator. Please review the AED video below.